So we're going to start with modeling a hand, and I'm just going to create a polygon cube. Drag that out in my viewport like so, and I'm going to just adjust some of the dimensions. I'll set the width to 2, so now I'll have my fingers be able to split. My height to 2, so I'll have some subsections to create the roundness for the actual hand itself. And then I'm going to set my subdivisions or subdivision steps to 3, so that I'll be able to pull out my thumb as well as articulate my knuckles a little more. If it looks a little awkward, I can just go into my vertex of object mode or scale and adjust it. I'll just move these out a little bit, like so. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just quickly throwing this together. So I'll start out by working on the thumb, because this is where it gets a little tricky. Normally, people associate the thumb just coming straight out of this location. When you actually look at the thumb, you look at anatomy, it doesn't. You want to actually select these 4 faces here when you have this base geometry. And then I'm just going to go up to extrude, make sure I keep faces together, and depending on how this extrudes, I'll use local. To pull all my faces out, like so. And then I'll select 4 faces again, and extrude again. And it looks like I grabbed an extra face. I'm just going to undo, grab those 4 faces, make sure I don't have anything else, and do it again. And I'm just going to scale this down a little bit, like so, and now I start to get the location of the thumb. Some people may not say this really looks like a thumb yet. I mean, I can easily get to that location or get to a better position. All I have to do is do some average vertices and hit apply, and that will smooth it down a little bit, and that looks a lot better. So I'm just going to undo. And now I'm going to start with the fingers themselves, and this is an area that usually gets people a lot of trouble, because I start out with only 2 sections here, and how am I supposed to get 4 fingers out of this? So I'm going to do an extrusion. Like so. And then I'll press G to repeat my last command, which is the extrude. So now I have the faces that I need to actually create the fingers, where I have these 2 faces that are going to come out for the finger, these 2 faces, and then these 2 faces. I know it looks a little crude, but it actually does work, where we're keeping everything quadded right now. I don't have any triangles. There might be a couple stars in my geometry, but that's stuff that I can fix and modify. So now that I have this, it's more of just flushing it out to make everything fit and readjusting some of the topology to get a better feel for the model itself. And I'm just moving some verts around to try to shape this and get the flow of where the thumb is going to be. And like I'm looking at these faces right here to extrude the thumb out, or these faces so that I have the webbing. I think it's going to be these faces. So I'm going to extrude again. And just keep in mind that there's hundreds, of, if not thousands, of different ways that people model a hand. This is just one of the ways that I do it. And I say one of the ways is that almost every time I change it in some form and make some modifications to how the hand is looking, or what I think might be a little more efficient for that model. So just keep that in mind, is that you may find some of the techniques that I'm using beneficial, and then you may question some of the decisions that I'm making. In the end, it's about getting the model to look good. That's all that really matters. Alright, so I got that, and now I'll just go to my top view. And I'm going to my top view because I want to just take a look at the way my hands are placed. And what I mean by that is I just have to move some of my vertices around to get the better positioning for our hand. When you look at the hand, how it's laid out is that our middle finger is our longest finger, or relatively longest finger, and that's based on positioning. So I'm just trying to adjust the positioning of where the fingers will come out. And make sure I get the roundness that's necessary. Alright, so that looks pretty good. And I'll just come out with the middle finger here. To local. And I'll just come out for the first knuckle. To the second knuckle. And then come out to the tip of the finger. So when I get out to the tip of the finger here, I'm just going to make some quick adjustments. I'll pull these verts back, pull these verts back, so that I get the roundness. I might need to pull the tip out a little bit. And this is just to get the general idea. There's not any subdivisions yet on it. It's just to sort of rough out the finger. And like now that I have this here, this is where I can just throw on the average vertices. And we can see that it's a lot smoother now. And I mean, that's something that people are typically concerned about, is how's my mesh going to look. Things don't look right now, and that's where I'm just not worrying about it. I'm just flying through the different techniques where I can take some of this and bring this down. Bring that up so that looks a lot better. this a little thicker for where the knuckles come in. That looks alright. And as far as the articulation of the knuckles, I mean, right now, since everything's quadded, I can just insert edge loops, and that will allow me to give the more articulation. So I can just go into my insert edge loop tool, and edge loop there, edge loop there, edge loop there, and edge loop there. Right now I'm using 3 edge loops just to keep it, again, clean. This should allow me to redefine the shape of the knuckle, like so. Come into the top view. Just slide this up. And I'm just doing some scaling on verts right now to give it a little more roundness. That's one of the important things to realize, is that fingers do have roundness, they're not blocky. And just right now, with only 6 sides, I'm able to achieve that roundness. And there's a little hiccup right there, so just need to fix those. And I'm going to just do an average vert again. Alright, so that distributes it pretty well. And I mean, with these average vertices that I'm doing, it's just allowing me to smooth out my mesh without having to apply a mesh smooth. I mean, a mesh smooth is going to quadruple my topology, and I don't want that. I want to keep it as low poly as possible right now, for the sake of being able to manipulate vertices and have control over the model. Once I start subdividing, is that I have to use other tools that sometimes aren't as friendly. So if I keep it low poly initially, is that it's not too difficult to increase the topology when necessary. It's keeping it relatively clean, keeping it simple, and getting the overall form. That's really the most important part. And I mean, at any point I can hit 3 to take a look, and we can see how the model's shaping out. And I might have to do another extrusion here and do some reworking of that topology, but it's starting to come along. And I'm just trying to make some adjustments so that I can actually create the fingertips. And I've seen so many different techniques. Typically the easiest one is to just do a face extrusion here. Something like that. So I'm doing a face extrusion to scale this down. or scale this face down, everything is quadded still, and then I'll do another extrusion, and I'll just push this down a little bit. And then do another extrusion, and then this time pull it out. And I'll do one more extrusion, and pull it up, and pull it forward. And I mean, this is a lot of detail for the fingernail, and like that's how it initially looks. So there's definitely some tweaking to this, but we can sort of see the overall shape of the fingernail. And what I mean by tweaking is that, I mean, you look at it and it doesn't really look that appealing. So it's going into a vertex subobject mode and adjusting positions, hoping that we don't get too much overlap going on. So that we can get the finger laid out. And I mean, this setup for the finger is pretty good. Right now I still clearly need at least one more subdivision so I can create the roundness of it, but you can see that I have the detail on the fingernail, and it's relatively quickly and not too difficult to achieve. And the reason that I'm just focusing on one finger right now is because I'm going to actually duplicate these fingers. So once I get one finger that's really good, I'll just be able to move them around to the other positions and then just make simple modifications to that base mesh. So rather than creating four individual fingers, I'm just going to use one and work from that one. And you want to keep in mind that depending on, again, your level of detail that you're shooting for, is that you can switch between your modes to get a better idea of how is my mesh looking. Is it looking right? Is it looking wrong? Is there things that I can make modifications to? Because when you're working on this, is that you can take a look and it'd be like, all right, yeah, that looks all right. And then when you smooth it, it looks pretty hideous. And that means that you probably don't have enough subdivisions and want to go back and adjust those. I'm going to just actually insert another edge loop. And I'm going to do this down the middle of the finger, like so. And that's just going to allow me to get my roundness for my finger. So I'm going to jump to my top view. And go into my vertex subobject mode. Select these verts, and then go to my side view. And I'm just going to scale them up. And then I'll go back to my top view. And I'm just going to grab the two sides of my fingers and scale these down. And again, I just want to look at how the finger's shaping. It's pretty good. You might want to take this back a little bit. And I mean, with everyone's fingernails a little different. I'm just trying to get it to look sort of like what my fingernail looks like right now. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I'll just go back to my low. And I can start looking at the thumb also, because I'm going to need to create a independent thumbnail for that. And it's just looking at the location. I might try to twist this a little bit. And I'm just trying to twist this up a little bit, because if we look at our thumb in its natural position, is that there's a slight twist to it. Just take this geometry and try to select that there. Just pull this up so I get a better transition into the thumb. And like once I start adding in the details like I just did for the thumb or the fingernail, I'm really limited to what I can do as far as like the average vertices. I want to be very careful not to average vertices anymore, because that will just destroy the thumbnail. Or I should say the fingernail. So I'm just going to do basically the same thing that I just did with the finger there, where I'm going to select the face, do an extrusion, and try to position it. And since it is angled, it becomes a little more interesting to achieve the results, because there's my local axis, or there's my world axis, and here's my local, or vice versa. So you end up with an area that's a little more difficult to work with, but just takes a little patience. And I'm just doing the process again where I did the extrusion in, and now I'm doing the extrusion out. So I technically have all the geometry there. Now it's just taking a look at it and making it work. So I'm just going to select it, focus in, and right now the thumbnail looks pretty demented. I do have all the cuts that I need, so that's definitely a benefit, but I gotta just fix the positioning. There's no fast way to do this. It's a lot of just move inverts, and I mean the methodology is the same for any program, so I'm big on the idea of if you know how to move revert in Maya, you should be able to know how to move revert in 3ds Max. And I just went quiet here because I'm just really trying to focus in on the verts that need to get moved to really shape the thumb. And I mean, this is just more manipulation, looking so that you understand how the vertices are affecting the model and what you can do to get it to shape correctly. bring the thumb a little closer. Alright, so that starts to look pretty good, and I'll just look at the smooth. And the low pulse back in on my finger so that I can start doing some of the articulation for the knuckle itself, or I should say for the knuckles themselves. When you look at the finger, is that there's typically creasing or folds inside or on the top as well as the bottom. When I look at my smooth right now, I don't really have that. There's ways that I can achieve it simply by just adding some more edge loops. And I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to do some extrusions so that I can get better definition. So I'll just start out by inserting some edge loops, and I'm inserting the edge loops at the center. Yeah, I'll just avoid adding an edge loop there right now. At the center, between the segments, and the idea behind that is so that I can keep the mass of the finger. And I'm just going to slide these parts there. And when I look at my smooth, what I'm looking for is the creasing that's going to happen on the underside of the finger. And like when you look at your finger, you should see the creasing that we're seeing right now. And I'm just trying to make some adjustments there. So now that I have the creasing for the underside of the finger, I need to just do some of the articulation for the top part of the knuckle. And when we look at our fingers, is that we'll have basically in between the knuckles a little more flesh. And then we just have a lot of wrinkles in there, so I'm going to try to, just like I said, is use the extrude tool to add in that definition. have some overlapping going on, so when I pulled everything together, I have to fix that. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to come into my face subject object mode, and I'm going to select the 8 faces for the top part of the knuckle. And I'm going to do extrusion. I just need to do it on the local axis, like so. And then I'm going to press G and do it again. This time I'll extrude it out a little bit. And realistically, I should have enough geometry with those few cuts to create the wrinkles or the creasing in the finger. So just with those extrusions, I can now manipulate and I'm just pulling everything apart. So I mean, I can look at this here and it looks pretty hideous as far as the bumps go. So I can make some adjustments there where I can move the creasing to make it either subtle or more dramatic. And I know the geometry looks busted, but it's just take a look at the smooth. How does that look? And when you look at it, are there ways to adjust it so that it looks better? just taking a look at it quickly, you can see now I do have some creases in there. If any of the creases look too funky or too strong or there's not enough, I know that I can just extrude a couple more times and be able to get them. And, I mean, the smooth or the low poly looks really twisted as far as what your geometry looks like, but I mean, when you look at your smooth, you get the creasing. So I'm just going to do the same process here to this finger or this knuckle. And again, I'm doing this all before I do the other fingers because, as you can see, the knuckles themselves are a tedious process. So I wouldn't want to do that for every finger if I could avoid it. So now I have some more extrusions. I'll just jump to my side view. And where I mentioned earlier about the averaging vertices and not wanting to do it, we can also focus the average vertices into certain areas. So I can select vertices and just hit apply, and it will average it in that location. You can see that it doesn't give me exactly the effect I want, but I can do it to that location there on the top part of the knuckle, and then just move it up and make some scales. So this just allows me to get started a little quicker, where the geometry is a lot more evenly distributed, so I can take a look at my smooth and see what type of effects I have. And realizing that this knuckle has a little more creasing, spread this out a little more. The purpose of spreading this out is so that I can do another extrusion with some of those segments. So I'm actually going to select these faces and do an extrusion on them. I think that looks a lot better. I can also just move my verts so it doesn't look so linear or robotic. I mean, that's the whole part of organic modeling, is that you really need to make sure that it feels like it's a living thing, and it's not all evenly distributed. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is actually take this finger off. So I can duplicate it. And I'm just going to adjust the pivot point, so I'm going to hold down D and then V so that I can snap it. And then V and snap it to the model. So I have the finger set, and that's why I'm just now moving it around and positioning it to the model, because, I mean, basically the finger should be set. It shouldn't need to adjust much. And if you notice, I'm really not scaling anything. I'm just, I did scale the pinky, but the rest of the fingers, I kept about the same size, or I kept the same size, and I'm just positioning them. If you look at the webbing on your hand, is that you'll notice that that's correct, is that you don't actually need to scale them like we have a tendency of doing, especially when we draw. We have a tendency of reshaping the fingers to what we believe they are. So I'm just trying to get them into position so that I can actually attach them. And that it does look natural. So, I mean, looking at the hand, is that I know that this can be combined. But now it's just figuring out how to work these other faces and other sections in. Again, as I haven't, everything's quadded right now, so there's no triangles in this at all. And I mean, that's really, really important, because it will make attaching all this so much easier. I mean, I definitely have an idea that I want these two faces, or some combination of these faces, to work. And I mean, looking at this, I want to keep a gap, so I could possibly delete these faces here. And I'm going to go to vertex of objects, and I'm going to do some vertex snapping. And like, this is where there's going to be a slight issue. The vertex snap isn't going to be clean as far as the geometry goes, so I'm trying to do as best I can, where I snap it to the finger. And the reason I'm saying it's not going to be the ideal position is that I'm going to need to add an edge loop. Just looking or trying to look at the geometry. I deleted that face there, but I should be able to, just create the two faces and be good. Insert an edge loop there. And I mean, this is just part of the trick, is that I'm trying to keep it as low as possible right now, so that I can make the necessary changes to my geometry and add where I need to. Right there in the webbing is probably the one area that's going to be a little tricky. But, I mean, now this looks like it's actually ready to combine. And I should be able to just bridge this closed. You could definitely use the append poly. I'm just going to use bridge. Make sure I have two edges selected. There we go. And I can go to my smooth, and that sort of tells me whether my edge is welded correctly or not, and clearly they did not. So I'm just going to select the edges here and just go down to the merge. And I'll turn on my smooth, and looks like I still have some issues. Increase my tolerance. And that should stitch it. I guess there's one area that's still being a little finicky, so I'll just merge the verts. Alright, so now that looks a lot better, a lot cleaner. I have 2 fingers down, and I just have 2 fingers to go. So, since I haven't deleted history in a while, I'm just going to clear that out. And when I look at my top view of my hand right now, I can definitely see that there's a little goofiness going on, so I just want to fix that. And I mean, looking at this is that I'm going to have to probably move the thumb up a little more as I'm getting the fingers attached. Just the initial fullness on the fingers don't feel like they're there just yet. So I want to make sure the fingers look right. And then I also have to just get the webbing. Some more open faces, so I need to merge those. And I'm just trying to get the positioning in between the fingers about right. I mean, I still need to really address the webbing, but that's a good start. And I'm just trying to see what I can line up as far as edge loops go. And edge flow. I think that should be good. So I should be able to go in and snap, snap, snap. That's better. I snapped somewhere else, and that was bad, so I just had to undo. And I mean, when I get to this position, I can also select those faces and just delete them, allowing me to see the opening a little clearer. And once I have this snapped, I'm just going to pull freeze transformation on this so I can zero it out. And I'm just going to move this forward so that I can go in and delete these faces. Then I should be able to just zero this back into position. And then I can combine this. Select my openings, and I'll do a merge, and I'll just go to edge, and merge those. I know I still have some openings. Yeah, there's some on the bottom, and there's some inside the webbing of the fingers. But now at least I have everything combined. I just have to fine tune it. When I look at my top view, my hand looks pretty natural. There's some just tweaking and adjustment that I need to do. And this is where, like, when you look at it, is that this part of the hand feels a little long. So that feels a little better. And I'll be able to insert the edge loops or add the definition that I need to, so that I can create the knuckles here where the fingers actually connect to the hand itself.